You see over here the red mark that's on my nose.
Yeah.
What's going on with that red mark is when I was a child, I was in a swimming competition, and in that swimming competition, I was trying to get close to the wall, and they had people with tappers to tap my head when I got too close to the wall because I couldn't see it coming. And the person responsible for tapping me on the head, who happened to be my coach, she's very lovely. I don't blame her. She didn't tap me. So my nose slammed against the wall, and I could have stopped, but I was like, I'm close to winning this thing. I think I'm in the lead, which I was. And so I kept on swimming, and I ended up getting the gold. And it was a really cool time. It was a really cool time.
And I broke my nose falling down a flight of steps, tumbled for salty. I have like a little indentation in place, if you want to feel it.
Yeah, no, yeah. So, but yeah, that's the exact same place actually. Yeah, and I had no idea whether I broke it at the time, but in hindsight, yeah, probably. I mean, it was, wasn't quite the same after.
It could be the cartilage. If it's cartilage, because if it's bone, it would really hurt, I think. Yeah. But I was 4 or 5, and I remember clearly tumble salting, banging my nose at the end of the step. Oh, jeez. And I was going to have it straightened out when I was like 23. Yeah. I had the hospital room and everything, and then I said, what the heck am I doing this for? I said, forget it. Because they ended up breaking the nose, resetting it. I said, leave me alone. And I didn't go in. Yeah. You want to feel my nose?
No, it's all good. Well, what's interesting too is like you have been to the Holy Land 5 times.
Yeah, I can't believe I did it. Can't believe it.
And what was it?
Did it do any good? Of course not.
Well, my big curiosity is you've been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre where the resurrection happened, and everyone who's ever been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre I've ever talked to in the history of the world has said that you go in and they rush you in, they rush you out, basically.
If you're on the tour, yes.
Yeah. No, I have met people who have celebrated Mass in that really small space. What was it, like 5 a.m. in the morning or something?
Wow.
Well, what was it like for you? Because the tradition is that Adam is buried at the foot of that rock. Like Golgotha means not only place of a skull because of execution, but it's also place of a skull because Adam's bones were there, and that a fissure in the rock opened up that the blood of Jesus dripped down onto the blood.
Like you went around, all right, when you go in, I think I told you this once, you go in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, immediately on the right there's these steep steps that go up that lead to the Mount Calvary. Supposedly, Constantinople leveled off the Mount, there's a hill, and with the steps. And on the right is a Roman Catholic altar with Our Lady of Sorrows, a picture of Our Lady of Sorrows. Then you keep going some more, and like really where Jesus died is run by the Greek Orthodox, and they have a Greek Orthodox crucifix. Yeah. I would say a life size, a little smaller than life size. Can't remember, it's so many years.
And you have the skull at the bottom.
Okay, but wait a minute. That underneath the crucifix is that opening in the ground with these bronze-looking star-shaped thing all around this hole. You put your hand in the hole, you're touching the rock of Calvary, the original rock of Calvary.
Yeah.
Now, the last time I went, they took away the floor and they made it all clear so you could see the whole rock of Calvary. You could stand there and you'll be standing with the plexiglass or whatever it was, I don't know, glass, and you would see the rock underneath. Then you go down the other side, not the other yet, like there's steps to go down, and then there's like you go a little to the right, and then they show you, and that's covered with a glass thing, a fissure, and they said this is where Adam is supposed to be buried, or had the skull, I forgot, is there. Then you go a little tiny bit more into the church. Is an old church, I'm going to go back. Yeah. There's a sound of chanting, there's a smell of this rose, incense, holy water.
Yes.
And Greek Orthodox, the whole place is the beautiful smell. And the chanting, you hear the, what do they call those ones? The Syrian Orthodox. Ding, ding, ding. As they chant, they're ringing a bell, and you hear that. There's always some kind of chanting here in the background. And then, when you finish looking at where Adam's head is, you make that little right, and there's the stone of the anointing.
Yes.
Supposed to be where Jesus was
People bring rosary beads to touch to the stone of the anointing. They bring all kinds of stuff. Now, whether it's the real deal or not, that's hotly debated. I've heard it's a mystical experience visiting the stone. I've heard it's very, very powerful.
I felt shocked. Nothing. And then, let me see, then from there, there's long steps. That's stone. The church is kind of stone. Oh, yeah, there's a big picture of Mary Magdalene with Jesus. Big picture, old. It's very old, on the wall. Then you go down these steps, all stone, go down, go around, down, quite a bit. And all the way down there is where St. Helena found the true cross. And they have a statue of St. Helena. That's how she looked. I don't know, I forgot. There was some kind of a statue there on St. Helena. Then you go back up those steps, and then there's a little chapel on the side where they say Mass. And supposedly, but there's so many of them, especially the pillar that Jesus was tied to when he was scourged. But there's a few of them, you don't know. And then the chapel's average, nothing outstanding. What else? Then you also go not far from there. Everything's right there. It is where Jesus' body was laid, and it's like a chapel within a chapel. It's a little old chapel, and you go in the first entranceway, and it's under glass. It's supposed to be the stone, which is, I think the glass was cracked. I'm trying to remember.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's supposed to be, because because maybe nothing.
Yeah.
And it's part of the stone that was in front of the cave. And then you go, that's a little ante room, and then you go into the other room where it's where Jesus was laid out. And, there's a slab on it, like a marble, I guess, I don't know, some kind of a slab. And at the head of the slab is Jesus resurrected, like this metal thing. It's made of metal, but the icon, I think, can't remember, so long ago. And then, you can pray there. And then you go around this little chapel. This is the best part. You go around. And I told you, I think I have to tell you this. There's, let me see. We go, and it's supposed to be part of the Jesus' tomb, and there's an open space, but it's hidden by a little curtain. So you lift up the curtain, and there's this little Greek Orthodox priest in there, all squashed in this little thing.
Tiny little corner.
It's the funniest thing. It's comical. And then he's selling you, it was so weird.
Little bits of oil, like little tchotchkes, yeah.
Oil, but maybe there was the other stuff, I don't know. But all little oil, holy water, and he's selling it to me. And I think he just put the money in a basket. I can't remember. And then that's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then one time when I went there alone, the 2 times I went alone, plus you need to go to God, and standing there in the middle of the need to go back. And I'm standing there in the middle of the church, and I was just taking it all in. I said, this is where I want to be. I said, this is the greatest place in the whole wide world to be. Just standing there. And then all of a sudden comes a bunch of African women wearing those long things that they wear. And on these robes, the pattern of the outfits was the face of Jesus. Wow. It was all over the clothes they were wearing. And I think I don't know if they had turbans. I can't remember. Like in Nigeria, they wear the turban, and then they wear the long wraparound. It's almost like a sari wraparound dress. And there were about 10 of them singing in their language, processing all around the church. I followed them. I was so inspired to follow them. And they're walking around, and I'm right behind them, just following them, because, I don't know, that's what I did. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Matthew Henry, who wrote a commentary on all the Bible and was certainly no friend to Roman Catholicism. He was a more puritanical leading Christian that I'm aware of, if memory serves me. Around, I want to say the 16th century, if maybe he was 18th, it's been a while. He even references in his commentary on the crucifixion that the bones or body of Adam is laid at Golgotha. Wow. And even he gives the sacred tradition that it's passed on from, it's brought aboard Noah's Ark, that's then carried by, Abraham, and then it makes its way all the ways over to Jerusalem.
Wow, wait a minute. I would never think of that. Hold your thought. Wait a minute. I never thought. So therefore, Adam's bones were brought onto Noah's Ark?
Yeah.
When is that?
It's not in the Bible.
No, but it's in extra biblical tradition. It's in the writings of Ephraim the Syrian, in the book of the Cave of Treasures. At least it's attributed to Ephraim, and he describes the bones being laid almost like an altar, and the ark kind of like a church with men on one side and women on the other, and even the Catholic seer, Blessed Catherine Ann Emmerich, describes how there is a special chalice that's brought, and that the body is laid almost as if it's in an altar structure in the ark itself, as Noah's conducting a service that looks quite liturgical, which is pretty wild when you think about it. And then I believe it's Ephraim who describes Melchizedek being set apart by Noah to go to Jerusalem and be the high priest there, essentially.
Wow.
Who basically Abraham's going to meet. Now, God only knows. Ephraim may not be the author of the Book of the Cave of Treasures. In fact, there are some people think it is an anonymous work. I think it's legit because Ephraim had a mentor named Jacob of Nisibis, or James of Nisibis, who is, I think, one of the patron saints of Armenia, who was at the Council of Nicaea at 325 AD, and we know he went looking for Noah's Ark. And supposedly he brought back a timber because he could not get to the Ark itself. An angel came to him because he kept on climbing higher and higher and higher to the mountain, basically. But at Echmiazman Monastery in Armenia, they have a piece of the wood that they claim comes from the Ark. Now, supposedly it's flat. So they keep on asking, well, how can it be flat? What part was flat? And apparently one of the bishops joked at one point, well, it could be the rudder. But I always wonder, and there's never been any carbon dating on it. There's been no work on it. I say, well, for crying out loud, you might have an artifact from Noah's Ark in Armenia. You should do some work on it.
Right,
you never know,
Right.
I'd also say that there is a lot of unusual, interesting tradition about whether it's only Adam's bones there or is Eve there with him. I think Eve was with him because the tradition states that after Adam and Eve were expelled from paradise, we read this in the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, which is most likely a genuine first century Jewish apocalyptic text. Adam and Eve are then taken to a cave and they actually live in that cave. They leave the mountain of God and they're there. And after they die, they're buried there with all the other patriarchs. And actually, the patriarchs go and visit that cave up until the time of the flood. And that, in some accounts, Adam and Eve are both carried, and that they're not just bones, they're full bodies that are carried aboard. Why is it interesting? Because who carries on that legacy after the time of Noah? Well, Abraham. Abraham gets a cave called Machpelah for Sarah, his wife, and for the other patriarchs. And what's unique is we know where the cave of Machpelah is.
Where is it?
It's in the Holy Land. I want to say it's currently in Palestinian-controlled territory. I know that there is an Israeli-Palestinian deal to help share the site because it's also sacred to Muslims. I remember in the 19th century, they opened it up. There was claim that they saw bodies. I think right now it is empty, supposedly. But, God knows what's really there. I mean, it's been a while. I think the bones of Adam and Eve are most likely there at Golgotha. Blessed Catherine Ann Emmerich has another detail, which is unusual, that she claims, she's private revelation, but she claims that underneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's like a vast cavern with like all these relics of all these dead patriarchs. Like there's like a crypt basically down there. Now, before this is laughed off, there are tunnels under Jerusalem, hundreds and hundreds of tunnels. We know there's tunnels under the Dome of the Rock where maybe the Ark of the Covenant is buried, right? So, clearly the possibility of there being more under the rock of Golgotha, it's possible.
Right.
And there hasn't been done a lot of subsurface work that I'm aware of. So, I believe in prophecy. I believe in that stuff. A UFO was seen also over the Dome of the Rock, actually, at one point.
Really?
In the mid-2000s, if memory serves me.
Really?
And, of course, people were saying it was looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Well, I don't think a literal UFO was looking, but given, the recent findings and the recent Senate hearings recently on, UAPs, it does make you wonder what advanced technology the Israelis may have been using at the time. So it's some curious stuff.
Did you hear about the comet that has horns?
The comet that has horns, no.
Comet? Let me hear. Yeah, a comet has horns. It's up in the sky. It's going around. Around the solar system. And it has horns on it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, something's going to hit. I think something's going to hit. But I want to ask you, how big is a cubit?
I honestly forgot off the top of my head. I think it's measured based off of the arm span.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought. And of course, there's an Egyptian cubit and a Babylonian cubit, and you get into that.
Cubit that the Noah's Ark was made with.
Well, and it gets controversial with the cubit that Noah's Ark was made with, because how tall were people in the days of Noah? I mean, there is a claim that the pre-flood world, if it's a global flood, which I believe it was a global flood, there's a claim that the pre-flood world had greater oxygen levels. That's why you have bigger insects at that time. And so, you would have taller human beings, which in all ancient cultures, you have taller human beings in the past. We're not talking giants at this stage. We're just talking normal human beings, that they're tall.
Wow.
And, take it or leave it. It could be true. It could not be true. It's important just to think about it. There was a place called Dogobayezet, Village of Eight, in an area in Turkey around one of the Ark landing locations. It's about 17 miles away from Greater Ararat. And there were some large stones with holes in them. Now, they could be anchor stones. They could just be used for Armenian astrology. But someone etched crosses into them. And the local tradition at least states that this could be the grave sites of Noah, Mrs. Noah, Nachama. And one of the sites actually was illegally excavated in the 80s, and supposedly they found a huge skeleton, and supposedly it then disappeared really quickly. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. And frankly, the more you dig into it, nobody knows. But if you believe eyewitness testimony, something weird was found there. So if you take the idea that they were tall, very tall, and that the cubit is used based off of an arm measurement, the Ark may have been even bigger than we thought.
Wow.
It could be much, 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 much bigger.
Well, don't forget, God gave him the exact measurements. That's the best part. He gave him the exact measurements. So how long did it take him to build it?
So here's the tradition, right? So in Genesis chapter 6, God says he's going to shorten the days. Now, some people say that's a shortening of lifespan. Other people think that it's a shortening of the time before the flood. So I believe, I'm going off of memory here, right? It's been a while, but I believe that's about 120-something year period. So one version, extra biblically, has Noah preaching for 120 years for people to repent, right? And then he builds the ark in those 120 years, starting, getting outside help. It isn't just him and his kids. And some versions, angels even assist him. I believe that's in the book of Enoch, the angels assist him building the ark, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. And then they go. Another version, extra biblically, has Noah preaching the last 7 years before the flood. And he really crams it in those last 7 years. What's clear is the name Methuselah is a Hebrew compound word, Mutshalach, and that means his death shall bring, right? So in the year that Methuselah died was the year that the flood came.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I never heard that. I never knew that.
Yeah. So, and of course, if you take Enoch as reliable, I think that First Enoch is probably a authentic document. Then, of course, Enoch received visions about the coming of a flood. So did Adam as well.
Really?
So then, there would have been
That's in the Bible?
Not in the Bible, extra biblically. That's all extra biblically. Now you're dealing in lowercase t tradition, which of course, if you're a Catholic or Orthodox or traditional Anglican or Lutheran, you have no problem with that. If you are very hard on sola scriptura, then you have to say, well, probably is all bogus. I think it's legitimate. I think that Adam passed on to Seth, Seth passed on to, I'm not going to go through the whole list.
You have it memorized.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it is I think that there is a memory that there would come a punishment. The question is about the Nephilim earlier, Jared means descent, to descend. At least that's one interpretation. So in the days of Jared on Mount Hermon, that the 72 watchers come down. Even if you don't take a literal commingling, which I do think
the 72 watchers?
the angels that fall from heaven in Genesis 6, the Benecha Elohim, the sons of God, who come unto the daughters of men.
Which I take it the other way. The sons of God were the people that believed in God, and the daughters of men were the pagans. I'm not taking it as angels from heaven.
Well, you agree with St. Augustine. St. Augustine agreed that with you. The Dead Sea Scrolls take the angel view. Irenaeus seems to take the angel view, the student of Polycarp, the student of John the Apostle. So I think that both views are compatible, and I think that both are probably right. Ephraim the Syrian doesn't mention the angel view, interestingly enough, but Jubilees does, and Jubilees appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that's Jubilees is a extra biblical text that claims to be the record of the patriarchs, even the memory of Moses on Mount Sinai, passing on, and that does describe fallen angels cohabitating with human women, producing Nephilim, and Nephilim basically making the world a quite horrid place.
But wait a minute, John.
Yeah.
Angels are pure spirits. How is an angel going to produce sperm?
So the way you get to it, right, is in the book of Jude, it says that the angels abandoned their first estate. The word for abandoning their first estate in Greek is okaterion. Okaterion means house. They abandoned their pure spiritual house. Can an intelligence that's a pure spirit incarnate in a unique way? No. And in a pre-flood sense? Aquinas says that they can temporarily incarnate. Not permanently, but temporarily incarnate. So I think it's possible. And the thing is, Aquinas says succubus incubuses, for crying out loud. So I mean,
wait, what Aquinas say that the demon?
I can go to that another time, but
that's sexual demon.
Right, but that they could engage in acts and therefore carry reproductive material. That's what Aquinas points out. So we got, but what I think is really interesting about all of it at the end of the day is the mystery, the vast mystery that you have all the early authors insisting that it happened. Now, like you're saying, according to angelology in the Middle Ages, it doesn't fit. Doesn't fit at all. But we'll find out when we get to heaven.
That part you say doesn't fit, with this.
With Aquinas. But is Aquinas right?
There's a lot of things. I mean, Aquinas said, we could go on and on.
Yeah. Anyway.
Aquinas